I'm still trying to read the Free Association in the life of Frans Assisi, the big and famous monk who has a place called after him, and or he was called after the place, but many people they go there to visit and go walk in his footsteps. Of course, he's a saint in the Catholic Church, and this is something that I also have critical opinion about. But I understand other aspects of his life. I would like to stop by because it is, in many levels, inspiring for every spiritual and religious seeker, even though, like me, you are from another tradition or culture. Here we're talking about Franz of Assisi, the monk, from 1182 to 1226. So he didn't live so long, but had a big impact on his time and people, and also in the time after, up until today. Monasteries have been called the Franciscan order. The Franciscan monasteries are called after him. And well, in his search for God, being from that family of tradesmen who worked with money and trade and gains, and so he had this transformation I talked about last time in his life, walking about, trying to find his inner core. He found that he has to give up his will to become that of God's will. And in order to do so, he had to get rid of his selfishness and this false pride that we have in us as humans, and to understand that we have to be humble. And so that there are these three vows that the monastery has that Francis had put on the road for every follower since then. And these three vows are a vow of obedience, and a vow of temperance, and a vow of poverty. I would like to reflect on these because they have some more deeper meaning than just springs to the eye. Because when you talk, oh yeah, that's the traditional Christian or religious way of, oh yeah, no pleasures, no sex, obedience. That means you're not free to be critical, and poverty. Wow, everybody is seeking richness, and why is this guy seeking poverty? And is he crazy or some or what? And this is exactly the thought I got in my head first time I read this. Even though I'm myself is very religious inspired and spiritual inspired, but you can feel that there is some kind of craziness over this guy that's just beyond the natural human way of doing things. And so mostly also in his time, many people were like trying to gain a lot for themselves, or at least get enough to have this kind of lavish life, or a life that can be well-to-do in money and in many ways of practicing even the religious acts. But this guy goes to the extreme. He feels himself called by the Holy Spirit to go and do things people do not usually do, like when he went to those lepers and tried to help them, these impoverished people with a lot of diseases. And so he felt a kind of inner sweetness he never felt before by giving himself up to do this work of God, to be close to the people who are in need, and whom have fallen on very hard times. And not many people do that, but he found something in that, and then he continued. And so these three vows, to be obedient, and to be temperate, and to vow of poverty, was something that he held on to, and it's actually painted in the place where he lived, in the monastery of Assisi. I would like to show a very small picture. It's not easy to see, but it's from this book that I'm trying to get inspiration from. So this is the fresco inside the church of San Francisco Basilica, and well, the explanation is that in the architecture and these different pictures we see the three symbols that he represents: the poverty, and obedience, and the temperance, and how they are, like, in many ways challenged by the human self, and by devils and evil spirits, and how you have to hold on to it in many ways, and to be in kind of control. And so it's like getting inspiration from these frescoes to how to live your life. And in one of them, you can see that the priest, it's not easy to see here, but well, the explanation is that the guidance is it's like a ship. They are on board a ship towards God, and then there is this guidance by the captain. This is their priest or the spiritual leader, and so the people who are following with songs and chants, it's like the wind keeping this ship floating and going on, never stopping on its course. Because if they stopped singing and chanting and making prayers, there will be no motivation, and then the ship stops along the road and never gets to its destination. And it's this fresco is a kind of taking you on a journey to understand the mystery behind not only the man, but the religion itself. Also, we see the religious symbols here. The Christ on the right being persecuted, put to death according to the Christian tale, the official Christian tale. And so on the left, you have the Christ coming into the world as a person who's coming to deliver this phenomenological message from God. And so it's like you are between these mysteries and going in your order to reach that heights and that spiritual gain. And this is very interesting in the way that you can see a lot of contemplation and way to dig into some aspects of the mystery of life and the open windows, as you can see here. It's like you can look into different aspects of how to live your life and follow in the footsteps of some of these persons if you are from that tradition. And the basic idea is to get rid of the lust that takes humans away from the path of God, turning their will outside. And Frans and his followers, but also every religious seeker, would like to turn his will inwards so he can control, and she can control her spiritual ways, using her love and lust and needs turned towards God and giving yourself totally up to that. And that's not easy and not so understandable either for many people, even in our time. And so by walking through these three vows, I really get some inspiration of understanding how hard it actually is to try and follow in these footsteps. Some people can be forced into that. I have had times in my life where not a lot of money and trouble gaining your will and feeling that life is somehow harsh and rough. And so in those periods, maybe it's easier to open your heart up to another solution, looking upwards, finding God and a way of spiritual gains that comes to you more naturally. But it's much more difficult if you are in lavishness and have a lot between your hands to turn away from all that and try to find another spiritual way. And this is exactly what he's trying to make people understand, that it is a kind of combination between finding that inner will of yours to go against what you are wanting in your life, and to go and be part of an order that vows to actually focus on that. So you're focusing on yourself actually in that poverty. And there's a story about this that's actually inspiring here for me throughout this story of his. One of one of the things he did, they say, well, it's going along with his friend Maceo, another traveler, walking also like a monk in a way. They went to France, the Frankrike, and stopped in small villages along the way, and they had nothing, and they had to actually beg people for food, just a little bread on the way, and ask people of a little charity. And some of the people gave them, others didn't. And they were so thankful to that experience that Franz would tell his friend in the evening, well, I can see you got a lot more than I did, but look at what we got. And his friend was very surprised. We only got a piece of bread. We didn't have a lot of things from people on this evening. But he said, look at this. This bread that we've got is actually something human has not really been tampering with. It's from God. It's a kind of things that comes from nature, and only little or no contact with humans. And that means this is a gift to us from God. We have to appreciate so much. Are we worth more than that, actually? And so they also found that the difference in between how people treated him, his friend Maceo, as described in the stories, is a big and a huge man, with a kind of very fine attitude. You can say people liked him, and so they gave him more. And Franz was this small, a bit not so good looking person, and so they didn't really like him so much, so they didn't give him a lot. And wow, when I read the explanation, how much it actually is in our times, and maybe in every time, we just tend to forget that humans repeat the same things all the time. We tend to repeat the ways and stories of history. So even at that time, people could give persons after their looks, exactly like now. You could have a bigger sitting on the street, looking ugly and bad, and people would just give him or her less because they look bad and ugly. It's like something about them is disgusting, and you do not want to give a lot. But another person who's good looking, you feel like, oh my God, she deserves more. She's a princess. Why is she on the street? Or this guy is a beautiful, handsome young man. Why is he sitting there chanting, singing, having his guitar between his hands? And so it's when I read this story, I found, wow, it's actually the same thing that has been happening for them. But the most important basic thing he's talking about here is that God has provided for them along the way, all the way. They have not really been feeling that that kind of specialness as he felt on that trip. And so he understood that in order to find God, you have to walk in the footstep of Christ. That means the poverty, walking around people, preaching, talking, and also depending that God will provide you from day to day. And maybe you will just spend the night without any food, but you will be provided for one way or another. And in that way, he met another picture of himself in that kind of poverty that he didn't really realize before he went into it. And it opened a whole universe for him, that when you are poor, you have this poverty on the outside, and that the poverty like hitting you in your life, something happens inside you. You get cleansed in a way from that ego and selfishness and lavishness that you have had with you all the time. It's like it's burning from the inside, and you get more control over it, saying, you are not going to control me and using me for your goods and making me a slave to what you need, but I will make you a slave to my seeking of the higher levels of heavens, and the spirituality that's on the way. And that's why later many of the people have been describing him as the human who became a prayer. He is a prayer in himself. He's not only making a prayer. And people could see that, like that kind of spirit. That's because he had that understanding of giving up yourself to something deeper and higher. And it's risky. I know that. I can say this is a free association talk, and because it's very risky. Maybe you can get lost and you can get totally disturbed. And maybe he got disturbed during the way. Who would say, if you gave this to a psychologist today, and a person who would look into his story from a like identity perspective, to say, well, this man is deeply disturbed inside him. He is turning everything upside down than other humans would do. It's like you're trying to force yourself into a traumatic situation. This is trauma in a way, because you're giving up the most basic things, and your psyche will react. There is no doubt about it. You will have some kind of psychological reactions, because you have these deep needs inside you: food and shelter and protection and love and care, and you are giving all that up, and you're trying to put yourself on a road where you are really deeply exposed to the harsh life around you. But because he's looking, as I understand it, he's looking into the mystery of life, knowing there is a God that will provide and a Holy Spirit that's working among humans. It's like he finds the gate to the inside, whilst others won't find it because, well, they're not looking. They're not looking to that gate of the spiritual awakening. But he is. And so in that way, his life shifts and changes because he's looking for that inner gate of will and strength. And so he got it. And he got that sweetness of giving these things up, depending on God's love and mercy from day to day. And I know that from the Islamic spirituality as well. And I know also from the Jewish tradition, as I've read, that there have been these kind of persons through time. And we especially know it from the Hinduistic tradition and the Buddhist tradition in the East, and other kind of monastery monks who are working on themselves by giving up everything they owe and just walking around, wandering earth. Um, there are great stories in the Eastern tradition of philosophies about this, where these gurus and sages, they walk around having nothing, just exactly like Frans here is doing. And I know it also from the Muslim culture, where some spiritual gifted people, as they say, Sufi, walking around, they have been doing the same, putting themselves in situations where only God can provide them, and thereby really feeling that without the existence of God and the Holy Spirit in life, that higher mercy, they would not survive the day. And so you're really becoming dependent on God's will and God's love. And you can, like with the human tradition, like I am in today, and many people would be in today, they would say, well, hasn't God provided us with all this just to do the means in order to have enough? Like, well, I go and work and you go and work and do something for yourself and sell some products or whatever in order to gain enough, and thereby indirectly getting God's mercy and help, because this is how the world is working. And that's true. And that's why I believe these things are only for special people, like monasteries and monks and nuns. It's not for everyone, and at every time. I think most people just live under God's mercy, not knowing it, because God has made the earth like it is. Well, people, well, you okay? You learn how to work and gain your own money, and then you get fed, and you get what you want, and you go follow your pleasures or rest or sleep. But this guy is pushing it to the limit. He wants to say, I do not want to go these ways. I want to go to the direct source, understanding from the inside that God is there, and he will provide day by day, moment by moment. He will let his self explore that authenticity that is inside him, and not only that false self that he's been carrying with him. And so there is, I understand now, a deeper meaning of this vow of poverty. It's not just about becoming poor and like any stupid and ugly person saying, oh, look at that stupid, naive man. He's trying to give everything up to become impoverished. Why is he doing that? Something is wrong with him. But basically, what he's doing is opening a deeper gate to letting himself become more trusting in God's mercy and help and providence. And he feels this is the only way he does. He can do that, to feel it really. And so he get this fire inside him. He's like ignited by this way of life. It's actually working. It's happening. And he's not dead. And he goes all the way to France. Well, I can't understand it. I'm sitting here in the modern time, with cars and planes and trains. I can't understand how this guy on foot with his friend has walked all these miles from Italy to France, and then later goes to Rome, because after this trip he asked his friend, well, say, let's go to Rome and pray there by the Basilica of St. Peter and ask for help by the heavens and heavenly guidance. And so they go to the Basilica of Peter, the big church there, became the Vatican. Well, and they ask God of help to understand how to gain the treasure of poverty. Treasure of poverty. Imagine that. He's talking about becoming poor as a treasure. And that's because in his like philosophy and understanding, it's about when we fell from heavens, when the first humans Adam and Eve fell from heaven and God's grace, it's like they became aware of themselves, their sexuality and pleasures, but they also got this false self. It's like they suddenly are aware that they have distinguished themselves from God's realm. They were just living it. They were living the paradise, not aware of that distinction. But now they are distinct. They know they have some kind of another existence. And he wants to get out of that and back into that old paradise by seeking deeply God's mystery to open his heart uh, and get that peace in mind and soul that he's seeking this salvation through these kind of deeds. And to understand, you have to live. And this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to live it through all the way. And I find it very amazing, at the same time inspiring, but also at some aspects not easy at all. Um, but it's good to know that there's been people like living this kind of life. I also sometimes think, I was reading all this and thinking, okay, these people today who goes to these Assisi, the town, and the San Francisco Basilica and other places to follow in the footsteps. Well, okay, I don't know how much they are able to carry that load of fellowship. Can they really imitate him and go around begging? And what will happen to them? Maybe the police will throw them in prison. I don't know. It's not just, maybe times have changed, as they say, but some things never change. And that's the human and its inner connections between the outside and the inside. They seem to be the same, because we get these stories from all over the world for thousands of years telling us the same basic story. Go and seek out the deeper meaning, understand yourself more. And to do that, you have to give up whatever you have or whatever you're doing and go and find it some other place. That's why people go becoming tourists. But how much are people really ready and able to go and walk in his footsteps and really give up what they have? Can they just throw the credit card away and like all the luggage, give it away to some families around, and then say, oh, I'm walking in my own clothes here, sleeping under the starry sky, and just knocking on doors to get a piece of bread every day? I think some have tried and will try. I've heard stories about people who've been trying to get to as close as possible to this. And so many of the people who joins the orders of the monks and nuns in the monasteries, they are trying to live this, but they're doing it collectively, because it's not about, as they say here, it's not about them being together in order to reflect their stories in one another. It's being together to find yourself in a journey of others who are also focused on the same thing in themselves. And so it's not about that kind of socialization that's going to look to, oh, you have this, I don't have it, or you already went to that place, or you prayed so many times today, I haven't done all that. It's about walking your own path, but collectively. To sit with like 100 others, praying, chanting, sitting by yourself every day, being thankful for what you've got in God's grace, giving this to you despite the fall in the sin, and despite that we humans have lost the contact with paradise, and we are carrying this inheritance from our forefathers and living it on earth, because we are not in a total paradise here. This is the philosophy. We are in a place for suffering and alienation. We are not really ourselves as we should be, and we are out of God's grace. We have to reach it again. We are not out of God's mercy, but we have to reach the grace. This is what I associate with this and understand by reading it. And that's why we have to walk these miles and give things up, and maybe understand, we have to understand, well, let's take the suffering as a voluntarily way in order to open that spiritual gate, instead of just living it as it is, and we will suffer anyway. But in that way, you are suffering to gain control and get to the deeper meaning of things. I don't know. Well, this is one of the vows, and I will talk about the others in a bit. Perhaps before I go and talk about the temperance, the second vow, this is a fresco from Giotti, the painter who made the basilica. who made the paintings in Basilica. About the poverty, it is France who is getting married to Miss Poverty. It's like a picture of he's gone so far on that way that Miss Poverty herself has have chosen him as a bride, and it's like Christ. He's marrying them, and the angels are there. But there's something interesting here in the right corner. There's like an angel trying to talk these three men out of their way of life. And if we focus more on that, you can see this angel. It's like he's like trying to tell these three persons. One, he has like a bag of gold in his hand. He's a tradesman, and he has the clothing of a tradesman, and he's very interested in the money. He can't follow that way of poverty, and the angel is trying to show them the way to the right thing. And the second one is a priest who's actually not able to share his knowledge, and that's also a kind of false richness. Being poor, it means you share everything with everyone else, so you do not feel you know more than they do. Do not keep any secrets in that manner. And the third thing is the third person is a man from the higher classes who's connected maybe with the king or some families who has been owning land and have a special position in society, and he is not able to share the power that he's got to give more out of it and to go and walk these miles of poverty as well. This is very, very interesting symbolism. And these two small men down there who are trying to throw stones and branches, whatever they're trying, it's like to push Miss Poverty away from France. It's like they don't like the way he has been taking his life in that direction. Because I don't know how they explain it, but it's like they want to chase her away because they do not want France to be so occupied by her. But it's like they wanna have enough in themselves, their egos. So it's very, very deep actually in its explanation and the inspiration you can get from these phrases. This is about the poverty, and I will go and talk about the second vow. It's about being temperate. The second vow that this Franciscan order has is the vow of celibacy. It becomes celibacy. It's actually a vow of temperance to keep yourself away, especially from the pleasure of sexuality in attaching to another person, a human being, a woman especially. Um, yeah, well, we know that theoretically that monks and nuns have this celibacy in order to focus all their spiritual strength, mind, and body towards God, towards the message of love that will flow inside them, and they do not want to weaken it by turning away from it. And in many aspects, this can be, it's like against the human nature. And that's why it's very, very hardly understood. It's not easy to follow, neither to understand or to accept in many places. Also within the Catholic people, it's like something that goes against the nature of humans. We are made so we can attach to a woman, and a woman can attach to a man and have this life together. And that's why this kind of life is not for everyone. Maybe it's for people who reach a certain understanding age or a certain depth in their journey in the spirituality, that they can actually gather themselves so much and so strong to go and follow that way, keeping away from women. But so it's like, I don't know, here he gives an explanation saying that, well, it's like if a king had sent you as a messenger to a queen, somebody who he loves, and the first messenger goes and comes back and tells exactly what the queen said and how she reacted to that message, and the other one comes back and relay the message, but is more focused on her beauty, and relies to the king, well, she was like this and that, and she had this and that on, and she was so and such in her beauty. And the king gets upset by that, saying, are you looking at the woman, or are you relying the message that I have giving you? And this is a kind of parable that France is apparently using for his followers to make them understand that what God has created should stay in God's image. You have to focus like on the message of God, what God wants from you, and not let your eyes wander around, especially to look at women. And then you can say, well, how could he then interact with this lady Clara who comes into his life? And this is the beauty about this book. It's trying to integrate, the book I'm reading here is it's trying to integrate Clara in the mystery of his life, because he had this attachment to her that was very, very strong and was very known among people. But apparently they didn't have sex and they didn't go together as man and wife, but just kept their focus on finding the way to spirituality and the salvation of the soul. And then you can say, well, crazy people. And I'm very understanding of that. It's not easy to open up your heart and mind to this, but some people will be able to understand the aspect of denying that pleasure in your life in order to totally focus all your energies on delivering your soul and your spirit into God's hands all the time and at every moment. It's like really crushing your inner needs. And I don't know, maybe that can make people go a bit crazy or seem very strange and different. And maybe they will lose some kind of vitality and energy. At least that's how science also would, and psychological science would tell us, is it's a basic thing in the humans that we have these drives for another contact. It's very, very understandable. And when we grow, we understand that, well, has been following us. So to take control over it in that harsh manner can maybe have these side effects that make people not really understand what these people are doing. But nonetheless, it's like he has lived this life together with Clara without being with her. It's like she's in the monastery of San Damiano, and he's wandering about and coming there sometimes, and being an Assisi, she wants to talk to him a lot of time. They have a trip to the woods together, talking and having a meal, but he's very harsh and he never puts his eyes upon her or other women. And so it's like he's really showing the example of not really wanting anything from life. He just wants God's grace. But I wonder this bubbling feeling of love that's inside him, what he's done with that. Yeah, basically, he would have turned it towards some kind of scripture or song or praise for God, and maybe loving this woman in a kind of religious way. It's like, okay, I love her for following in the footsteps of Christ and going to the religious heights of spirituality. So he loved her for the way she is, her religious beliefs and understanding. And so this temperance becomes a very central thing for this order that he has created. And you can ask yourself, is that really necessary? Well, in their opinion, it is. If you really wanna push yourself out of the falseness of life, as we said with poverty earlier, you have to go all the way also with this kind of celibacy in order to contain yourself and not just give yourself into sexual pleasures. And here there is another fresco from the same painter, Giotti, in San Francisco Basilica, showing that celibacy has been put into a tower. We can see it here. There are two angels putting Miss Celibacy in a tower. She's protected, but she's given the palm branch she's giving the peace and the palm branch of victory. And down there is this knight, maybe it's himself, who wanted to be a knight in the early days, trying to bath and getting help from these knighthood values of being honest and brave and good. These are some vows that the knights had at that time, and ready to sacrifice yourself. And on the right is a very interesting thing, that it shows the triangle of love, hope, and faith, trying to push away these angels of lust. Not angels, but kids of lust. One of them is Eros, who has the bow and arrows. He's trying to always hit people with that kind of sexual pleasure, just to experience the pleasure in itself. not really feeling the love behind it, and they're being pushed away by the triangle of faith. So to protect these people who are wandering on God's path, because what do they need this for? They want to find the true love in the person, not just in the lust of how they look and the sexual pleasure of getting a piece of who they are. So we can see it's really a direction that's not really so easy to follow, not especially today, but people do nonetheless find their way there and really go totally against everything in the world that really entice this kind of physical pleasures that turn their minds away from the road of God, as they say. I don't know, in my opinion, maybe it's the temperance that's needed. It's kind of more balanced temperance where you can experience these pleasures, but within the limit maybe of marriage. And this is how most people go around doing things in many other places. But these are also like special examples. On the left, there is even a picture of Dante. He's been taken in here to receive the people who want to follow the road of poverty from the different orders of the monks, trying to follow in the footsteps of Frans and locking up Miss Temperance and in celibacy up in the tower. So to say, basically, it's about transforming the sexual love, the sexual drive, into the love of God, into the love of the mystery of the Spirit. And well, that seems actually exciting. It's not something to be laughed at or looked away from or just shaking your head at. If many people would like to delve deeper into themselves, and how many people haven't, like me and you and many others, really tried the sexual pleasures and tried to live with a woman and maybe go and follow in that, and then afterwards you you finish with that act and pleasure, but something is not really too deeply fulfilled inside you. But when you have been with a, like, I'm not a celibate, been with a woman whom I loved, also for some spiritual contact we share, and then you feel a much deeper connection in a way than you had with a woman where it was only the physical pleasure and no spiritual contact and no deeper goal or understanding connecting the souls together. So there is something about it. But to go and push yourself all the way to become a celibate and put your mind and eyes totally away from every pleasure, for the first, it's not easy, especially in our time where pleasures are all over. We are exposed to them in every street and corner and road. There's not a day that goes by where many people won't be exposed to some kind of enticing thrill in some kind that opens the gate of the will and mind to say, oh my God, how beautiful that is, or she is, and so on. But so it's much harder today. And also the values of today, we live in these times, I think it's becoming global, are that these ways are for crazies and people who really just are weird and not really normal humans. And so it's of course looked upon as something out of time and out of place. But I can see that many people also will try to go these ways. When I read this, I get inspiration and association to it, saying to me that I would like to try and lift myself up and also delve in that mystery and gain that deeper satisfaction, sweetness that is in connecting to a woman, but by spiritual roads. It's like when you meet with someone you like and love, and you can feel that intensity in your talk and conversation and ideas. They just relate to each other without really any boundaries, and so you feel that deeper connection that has a sweetness in it that's actually deeper than if you just went on and met the same girl or woman and had sexual pleasure. And so there is some kind of logic in this that doesn't seem obvious at the beginning when you read about it. I'm not saying it doesn't still feel strange, and I wouldn't personally advise people to go against the laws of human nature of connecting and releasing your sexual energies and the drives that's inside you in a more natural way, because the same goes for the woman. She would like to release these inner energies. I'm sure that Clara would like to have had the same, because she fell in love with this Francis and he fell in love with her. They could feel their spirits just connecting. But they went still on the road of finding the salvation, everyone on his own, um, protecting themselves and staying true to the vows they have been giving of poverty and temperance and obedience. But they got the connection anyhow. And who knows, maybe these are just writings that's trying to tell us about the saint and not the human. And this is also part of what we have to understand sometimes by reading some of these ideas and books, that it's sometimes those who write about it would like to give us only the bright side of everything and the ideals, and not show us that there is actually a human being behind it. It's like hiding the weaker spots in what you are showing about some other people. That's why I don't believe in saints and hell and people who are just like it's no falters, no problems, no misdeeds. Uh, if we are these sinners as we are, we have to realize that we cannot rise above it either. We cannot totally rise above it. We will fall in some kind of pit at one point or another. Maybe not everyone falls in the same deep pits as we many others do, but there will be something that will falter and make these people not really able to rise to the level of angels and saints. And so I don't believe in the stories of these people that they are, oh, they have been all so good all their life. But I believe they have been really achieving a lot and trying to minimize any kind of negative effect on their life and their behavior in the faith. I believe that. And I believe they have succeeded along the way to gain that sweetness of really taking the reins into your own hands, pushing yourself in the direction that really opens the gates to the inner spiritual advancement and enlightenment. But to say, well, I don't know, maybe their trip to the wood had something in it we didn't know. Maybe afterwards, when they went home, each of them had some kind of energy release in a way that they would like to admit. And maybe his thoughts has been wandering towards her in a more sexual pleasure manner to connect with her more than he wants, but has been pushing himself away from it and thereby also distorting his nature. And this is not good. It's not good to distort your human nature. But maybe he didn't have that need. And I know of personalities in history, I've read about in history books, that stayed like single. They've been like married to their ideas and thoughts and preachers and whatever philosophy or writings, religious writings they have been giving. And so we can say that some of them has been married and they've also published a lot and given a lot to people, but some have also been in kind of celibacy without really vowing themselves to it. But they've just been living for the cause or idea. They've been married to their idea or religious belief and the cause they've been walking with in their life. So it is also possible to see Frans in that light, that he is that type of man who really is more married to the idea and the faith than the woman in his life, and the same with her. And so they found themselves both on that road and found a way to walk together on it, respecting the boundaries of that. And it seems easy to them because they are married to the ideas and the faith they have carried with them, and not to the natural human needs that others have. So maybe they are just different in also the strengths and abilities of that. So we have to also understand that not everyone is able to go and follow. And maybe everyone is, but not really doing or trying. I don't know. It needs a lot of social experiment to understand this. The third vow, this has become a long talk now. Well, it's about obedience, and well, obedience follows the two other, but let me just explain it with this fresco or picture and just leave it there because, well, what is there to say about it? Again, this fresco from the guy called Giotto, where we can see that Lady Obedience has Frans kneeling in front of her. She's giving him the the strength of obedience, but also the he has to take it on him as a duty, but he's doing it voluntarily. He's not waiting for her to put it on his shoulder by force. He's doing it voluntarily, and so by doing so, he is he's going along with it on his own. He's understanding that he have to be obedient, and obedient means that he has to listen. Listening means you have to be humble and wise, and these are the two on the left, giving him these this help, the humbleness and the wisdom that is gonna show him the way. Humbleness so he does not become too proud of himself, not to obey and not to listen and think that he knows everything and can do everything on his own, and the wisdom as to show him the way to what's right and good in life. And wisdom here has been given two faces. One face that's looking back at history, because this is wisdom, to be able to look back, and another face that's looking at the future, using the mathematical instruments as a symbol of trying to calculate what's coming. And so you are in between them. On the right, we can see there's some kind of angel chasing away the pride, because the pride is that half man and half animal that's taken from the Greek mythology as this creature of self-indulgent pride and rebel nature that does not want to be humble and listen and understand that it doesn't understand. And so it's been chased away, because this is the opposite of being obedient, being filled up by yourself and your own knowledge and understanding. Otherwise, it will take over in the mind and heart, and you will become disobedient and go against God's will and wish, and not really listen. And this is also a paradox in our life, I must say, because it's not easy. We want to listen and obey, but we want to do it to a certain limit. When we start understanding, we want to be independent in that listening. Or maybe we are from the beginning very much filled of ourselves in a kind of lack of humbleness. And we see it in human nature, that we can feel just, when we know a little bit, we think we know everything, and we do not want to listen to an external source, especially not a godly one where priests and imams and rabbis are showing us the way, because we can also see they can misuse it. It can become part of the corruption that is following religion since eternity, that people misuse these kind of obedient people to gain something out of it, become cynical. And so we are afraid of that, especially in my time where we're living today. So it's not easy. And at the same time, this guy who is human and half animal, well, isn't that also part of the human nature, that we are half animal and half human, and combined together we are this kind of strange creature that is trying to be itself outside of God's real, and at the same time not wanting to be the animal that it also is. And when a human becomes totally the animal, it will be rejected, just as when it tries to become the saint. So we are this creature in the middle. So why refuse that and try to pretend that we are being obedient while we're maybe really just reflecting the disobedience in us? This is the deep philosophical aspect that I think religion and people who are seeking God's pleasure and understanding has to struggle with. To what limit do I obey, and to how many details? Because if we know religion is filled of many details on what to do and not to do, and even the religions who do not have a lot of detailed ideas written out to people, only the basics, they also have to ask them of obedience to some certain level that can make our human nature like refuse, say, why should I really obey? And we obey because we want the higher and deeper spiritual good that's behind it. God's love, mercy, help, blessing, get something in return, the compensation that's in it, freeing ourselves from the devil, from heaven, from hell, from being lost as human souls. So there is some gain we want from behind that obedience, actually. And that's why we need humbleness and wisdom to gain it. Otherwise, we will be filled so much of ourselves that we become these arrogant types that just want to go on our own, and we will throw ourselves into hell. And this is the symptom of modern societies today. Everyone want to go on his own, and we will be throwing ourselves in a collective hell, uh, where we will be suffering all the time, most of the time, because we're not really finding that inner sweetness and what can you say, paradise that's also dwelling inside us. So there is also here a gate to some inspiration of the importance of obedience, and not only independence and being what you want to be, but also what you want to be in God's image. At the same time, how far should you go? Giving up your critical mind towards priests and bishops and whatever persons are holding the power, using your obedience maybe to throw you into battle, or to take all your money, or to use you to their own goals and ends. It's not easy. And this is something everybody has to struggle with, or maybe walk on their own and just say, I will be obedient to the inner spiritual heights and not to the persons who are holding them. And so to finish off this about the obedience, there is a side of it here that's mentioned, that it's about, there is also a side of it that's called punishment. Uh, and that punishment is like punishing the body, and punishing this part of your inner self that won't adhere and listen to the voice of humbleness, the voice of wisdom, and the voice of God's way. And so physical and psychological torture, or a kind of punishment, has been very used and widespread up until recently. In many places still an issue to be debated, but well, up until recently, it's been something that people just accepted as a way of putting your inner selfishness and that inner animal of yours into order, into place. You have to tame it, and you can only tame it by showing it the power of God, and the power of, what can you say, suppression in a way. And these ideas are being much rejected in modern times. That's why these things seems also to be, wow, punishment. You punish yourself for not being obedient, or let somebody else punish you, or ask God to punish you for being on a false track. So this is not easy. Um, but well, one of the things these people from the Franciscan order and France and others will be saying is, well, I'm ready to take everything on my body, because myself is my worst enemy. And so they look at it as the enemy, and they have to fight it with all means, even though it means punishment and suffering on the body, and means some kind of self torture, or letting others torture them, or like putting them into a situation where they suffer. And I must say, well, from my life, it's not all that crazy an idea as it seems. Sometimes we do go and punish ourselves for things we've done we do not like we have done, mistakes we've been going through, or a situation, and so on. And we punish ourselves, maybe not voluntarily and like by hooking ourselves up and let someone beat us, but we do go around punishing ourselves. And people who indulge in a lot of hedonism and pleasure, they reach a point, I have read and understood, that they reach a point where they do not feel the pleasure of it, and also they feel so guilty and feel so out of themselves. It's like they've lost something, and they want to gain it back by going through that clarifying punishment, or maybe arousing those pleasures again by being punished, by accepting the punishment and the suffering. So it's a kind of inner psychological mechanism inside us that works alongside our consciousness to say, well, you have sinned, you will be punished. So take your punishment now instead of taking it later, or do it while your eyes are open and you understand you're giving yourself into punishment. Then it comes blindly and from behind your back, or like a sudden crisis in your life, or a shock for you. Go and accept the punishment. Go and do something in return for what you have lacked to live up to. And so all the time it's about lifting this inner self to a height where we take the control and do not let its pleasures and ways run away with us, because we will become enslaved to it. We want to become enslaved to God and His ways. This is the idea, as I understand it, in the monasteries and the monks and the orders of people who are seeking spirituality, whether they are alone or with others. They want to go around saying that we are on a path to take control of ourselves, and even though it means punishment on the body and the mind and poverty, walking in poorness or temperance, obedience, this is what we need to free ourselves from that inner control that is false and that has made us separated from the heavenly sphere where we lived in a in a kind of paradise. And how funny you find this in different manners and many other religions and ways of life. Even though they don't use the same names, it's not Christ and it's not God and heavens and Dante and whoever they mention. It's other names from another culture, but it's like it's the same. It's going to become one with the Brahman, or it's about relieving your soul from this earth and not ending in hell but going to heaven, or it's about the resurrection in a new life where you are better off and maybe your life has become a paradise. Whatever explanation we're going to, it's all in a way connected. It's very strange to see that, even though people can't see it when they are talking about their specific religion and specific ideas. That's why it's very intriguing for me as a person from a Muslim background to go and delve into these mysteries of Catholic. Well, I'm in the Protestant part of the world and very affected by that as well. I have a big love for Christ and the ideas, the philosophy that is in the following in the footstep of that very beloved person. Um, but at the same time, it's very inspiring to see that what is this guy really trying to do? I'm looking away from, well, he's been put as a saint and all that and used for maybe other purposes I don't like, but well, there is something about this that opens the door to mysteries that I need to understand, open my eyes to. And so I hope everybody will have this open-mindedness to go and look for great personalities in their own or another religion, culture, because it will give them the way to understand more aspects than they have been dwelling on so far. And some people go and do that a lot. But, well, I don't know what we get out with. This is what I got out with. And these are the 3 vows of Frans of Assisi and the Franciscan order. Big respect for that. And thankfully, I got through. Not even started, because, well, where am I from all this? Have I even tried to live these issues? Have I had just one day in total poverty where I needed to beg or ask people? I've been asking God the opposite, actually, not to leave me in the hands of anybody and not leave me on the doorsteps of anyone to humiliate me. This is one of my deepest wishes, that God would not leave me alone for people who wants to humiliate me, enemies and people who would like to see me suffer. They never have and will never get the satisfaction of seeing that. So it's strange to sit and talk about this, but I think it's a good wake-up call sometimes, just to go and look at aspects of life and aspects of other people's life that you are missing or you're not really tried in your own life. The same goes when I've been looking into people who go sports, or like climb a mountain, go walking all around the earth, or sailing, or on a bicycle, or people going into what we call sexual pleasures and hedonism. It's very exciting for me as well to look into these aspects and into the life of these kind of people, to see what are they achieving actually, and what did this man who climbed the mountain really reach, and what happened to him? Did he change? Did something happen? What effects did it have on the life of this person? And what does that tells me? What do I need to do? Is there something I could maybe push myself to do better, or change, or avoid in many ways? So all respect for how this person took control of himself, and by doing so, he became this prominent inspiration for many others, that you can live in the love of God, and then you will be given that spirit so people can listen to you, understand you. And so that's why my words today, they are cold and dead. They have no real meaning. This is what I realize. This is the inspiration of this walk through here. Because I'm not living it. I'm just talking. But this person who has really been living that love and taking control of himself, he's been given the spirit to affect others in manners I and you and many others won't reach, because we haven't had this strength to do so. Or maybe craziness, or whatever you can call it. And maybe thankfully for that, we do not need it, and we do not want it. Maybe many people would say like that: I do not want it, I do not need that, I don't want to be inspiration for anyone, just want to live a fairly normal life. But I think it's one of the gateways of getting that effect in your life, is about doing something in your life you didn't imagine you would be doing, and be prepared for that. And remember these stories when you go and feel you are not humble and not seeking wisdom, not looking back to learn the future, being that arrogant, half animal and half human, disobeying creature who just want to walk out on everyone and everything. It's not a good thing all the time. So when you go and see people in poverty, can you embrace them and feel the sweetness in that? Can you accept sharing with them what you have at that moment? This is maybe the inspiration that I'm getting out of this, and having it with me in my life journey, so that when I encounter any of this, or maybe one day I try, I know that somebody else has been doing it, and maybe with success in a way or another. Thanks a lot.